From Bangladesh to Boston, Mass., the jihad is everywhere the same. The jihadi strives to please Allah by leaving you dead or lame. David Wood shines light on their misdeeds. He's here, and that's why he came. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome yet again to This Week in Jihad. David, have you noticed how many times when the revelation comes upon me, it mentions you?
Yeah, that's weird.
It is. It is. I think that it's kind of like Caliph Umar when he was saying that Muhammad was mad at him and he was really afraid that a passage of the Quran was going to be revealed about him. But he got off that time.
Yep, got off easy there.
Yes, indeed.
Hey, how many passages of the Quran do you think would have been revealed about us if we'd have been hanging around Mecca and Medina at that time?
Oh, they would have to add more chapters. There would have been a
The Quran. The Quran has 7,000 chapters. 98% of it cursing Robert Spencer and David Wood.
A tame goat ate them, David. Anyway, I believe there's some jihad. What do you think?
Yeah, I was about to say no. I haven't. No, it's impossible because I haven't heard any. But even I've heard of some. So,
oops. I just was going to the story. Oh, here we go. Okay. Anyway, David, actually, this is not strictly speaking jihad, but it's Sharia, and it is obviously, as we all know, all interconnected, because if you're Sharia adherent, you're going to be somebody who thinks jihad is something great to pursue. Anyway, did you hear about the great breast milk controversy in Pakistan?
I did not, sir.
Well,
I thought you were going with KFC Canada, going full halal, but you went in a completely different direction with the Sharia compliance. But go ahead.
Well, we can do KFC Canada as well, but breast milk first, then chicken. Now,
spoken like a true prophet.
All right. So, what happened was a hospital in Karachi was setting up a milk bank for babies. And this was something that was designed to help babies who were premature, babies whose mothers were ill in some way, maybe not lactating, in any case, designed to save lives, in other words. And they knew that this was a hot button issue in terms of Islamic law. And so they checked the Karachi breast milk company. They checked. They said, we've been working on the bank for a year, said Dr. Jamal Raza, the executive director of the Sindh Institute of Child Health and Neonatology. And anyway, he says, we had been in intense discussions with the religious clerics from Jamia Dar ul Uloom Karachi for the last 8 months. The scholars had raised several concerns, all of which were addressed, and they got the go-ahead for the breast milk bank. Yes, indeed. But then, after the thing was inaugurated, just on June 12th, last week, the Jamia Dar ul Uloom Karachi withdrew its fatwa of assent, and the place had to close. Hafiz Muhammad Tahir Mahmood Ashrafi, chair of the Pakistan Ulema Council, he said, the objective of the doctors who wanted to set up the human milk bank may be in good faith, but we concur with Jamia Darul Uloom Karachi and do not think it needs to be encouraged. And he said that the problem, of course, is that you got all these different sources for the milk, and they're going to be combined. Not only that, and then they said, okay, we won't do that. We'll keep track of who they come from, but also they had to keep track of who they went to. Mm-hmm. And everybody who they went to would then have to be listed as the foster child of the donor. And the whole thing
that's what I was thinking. That's what I was thinking the entire time you were telling the story. Is like, given their rules, this is not going to work out because everyone's going to end up being related to everyone else through fosterage. If anyone out there doesn't know what we're talking about, in Islam, if a woman breastfeed, if my mother were to breastfeed some other guy, or he were to drink her breast milk for some reason or something like that, then we're like foster brothers or something like that. If it was a girl who was breastfed by my mother, then that girl is now off limits to me because we're kind of brothers and sisters through fosterage. And so you've heard us talk about stuff before, probably when it comes to the missing Quran verses that were about breastfeeding adults, because Muhammad actually used this as a solution to a problem in society. Let's suppose you're a man, you have to go away on business, you have to leave your wife at home, but there's a guy who works in your house. Or maybe your wife has to be around some guy in some place or something like that. You're worried about them committing adultery while you're gone. So what do? This issue was brought before Muhammad. Muhammad, how do I make sure my wife is faithful to me with this guy, this young stud that works in our house? How do I know she's going to be faithful while I'm gone? Muhammad said, don't worry, I'll ask the great God Allah, who revealed, just have your wife breastfeed this young stud 10 times, and then he'll be her foster son, and there won't be any sexual attraction between them. So if you want to do away with the sexual attraction between a man and a woman, just have her repeatedly stick her big round breasts right in his mouth. And then there won't be any sexual attraction. Then you know you're safe. You know your wife is totally safe. There won't be any temptation. And so, funny story. This was eventually abrogated from 10 to 5, and they were both in the Quran. And then when Muhammad died, it's Sunan Ibn Majah, 1944. Don't take my word for it, but Muhammad died, and the story that Aisha told was while everyone was preparing his burial, oops, I had the only copy of these verses about breastfeeding adults, and my sheep came in and ate it. Oopsie.
Classic dog ate my homework. Do away with an inconvenient revelation excuse.
Good job, Aisha.
Yeah. She really, she did a great service, really, to Muslim women in that regard.
Yeah. I mean, seriously, can you imagine that? If Muhammad's wives hadn't conspired to remove that stuff from the Quran. It's occasionally an issue. You remember it came up like 15 years ago or so in Egypt when a cleric was saying, hi, guys, this is still a rule. If your wife has to go work at Radio Shack and there's a guy who works there, she needs to breastfeed him. And everyone jumped all over him. What are you talking about? We don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, because you don't remember it anymore. But if Muhammad's wives hadn't conspired to remove that from the Quran, this would still be an ongoing thing. And da'is would be defending it just as forcefully as they defend having sex with prepubescent girls. It would just be all over the place. So fortunately they took that out, but it is still an issue. It is still an issue, as you just pointed out. A place like Pakistan, they want to have a breast milk bank, but every child who gets some of this milk from various mothers and so on is now off limits as a future partner of any of the offspring of any of those women. And so you have to, it seems like a lot of work to keep track of who is now related to who. The crazy part isn't that like the cousin marriage capital of the world, and all of a sudden they're worried about fosterage, where you're not actually biologically related, you're not actually causing any birth defects by having these close relations. So hey, let's do away with the let's do away with the actual biological. Wait, what are they doing? Wait, we want the actual biological relationships that cause birth defects. Let's just make sure we don't have the imaginary relationships that don't cause birth defects. That's the one we're concerned about, because that's the one that Islam actually forbids.
It's just all the same, all this craziness all the time. And I should note also in that connection that one of the reasons why this is still a controversy, you're quite right, that because it's not in the Quran, you don't get people saying it very often. And there was the big controversy in Egypt when they did say it a few years ago, and people were saying this is crazy, we got to rein in these crazy imams with their insane fatwas. But the crazy imams with their fatwas are not coming from nowhere. This is still in Sahih Muslim. which is, of course, an extremely highly regarded hadith collection. And it's got Aisha reported that Salim, the freed slave of Abu Hudhaifa, lived with him and his family in their house. She, the daughter of Suhail, came to Allah's apostle and said, Salim has attained puberty as men attain, and he understands what they understand, and he enters our house freely. I, however, perceive that something rankles in the heart of Abu Hudhaifa. In other words, he had the hots for her. Whereupon Allah's apostle said to her, suckle him, and you would become unlawful for him, and the rankling which Abu Hudhaifa feels in his heart will disappear. She returned and said, so I suckled him, and what was there in the heart of Abu Hudhaifa disappeared. And so there are many Muslim clerics who say this is the way to prevent immorality, breastfeeding.
Yeah, and think about how hilarious this is. He's saying, hey, if you breastfeed him, then he'll be forbidden to you. It'll be unlawful for you guys to do anything. Well, it was already unlawful. She's married. So if you were worried, if you were thinking they were going to commit adultery, then they obviously don't care if they're breaking the rules here. And so, we're going to put your breasts in his mouth, and then suddenly law will become very important to this guy after sucking on your big round breast there for a little while. Yeah, maybe he can lay with you at night, and you could cuddle him like a baby, and so on, and then everything will be fine. This is stupid. By the way, there are a bunch of those hadiths, and there's an especially creepy one where the woman goes, he says breastfeed him. He says breastfeed him, and she goes, but he has a beard. And Muhammad said, I know he has a beard, and smiled. So imagine how creepy this is. Like, I know he has a beard. By the way, I'm going to be sitting in the chair in the corner watching all of this. What a creep, man.
It's going to be a great movie, the biopic. All right, so let's go to chicken. Speaking of breasts, chicken. Now
you're back to your awesome transition.
KFC Canada, yes, ladies and gentlemen, they sent out a letter that came to light quite recently. Says here, we excited to inform you that effective May 15th, and so now this has been 2 months now, KFC Canada will be launching halal certified chicken across KFC restaurants in Ontario. This initiative is a testament to our commitment to providing diverse and inclusive menu options for all our customers. And to be diverse and inclusive, David, they say that they assured all chicken products are halal certified and discontinued pork products at all KFC locations. So they're more diverse by offering less.
Yeah, and they're more diverse by having everything done according to the ramblings of an illiterate 7th century Arabian caravan robber. Everything has to be done his way. So what's that, Burger King? Have it your way? No, at KFC now it's have it Muhammad's way, and there is no other way. It's all one way. So now, guys, to be halal, it has to be slaughtered by a Muslim who pronounces the Bismillah, name of Allah, over the chicken as he's killing it, and so on. So, yep, that's definitely increasing the diversity. Everything has to be exactly one way in accordance with Sharia, because that's just a fount of diversity, Robert.
Indeed. It's interesting to note that this push for diversity ends up being incredibly monochromatic. And, of course, this is because the one group, the Muslims, or at least Islam in its classic form, is completely supremacist and unyielding. And so it doesn't really have any room for diversity at all. Once you allow for it, everything else has to go.
Yeah, and I don't want to give any spoilers, but we may have recorded Muhammad Meets Queers for Palestine. As I'm getting the Boom Boom Room started back up here again, Robert, you'll be making some appearances because I've got several that I've recorded and just haven't released yet. But we recorded Muhammad Meets Queers for Palestine, and that video, that episode may or may not have been sponsored by KFC Canada, and And the things that may come up in reference to KFC Canada are the finger licking good part, because Muhammad told his followers to suck on each other's fingers, and of course the queers, comparing queers for Palestine to chickens for KFC. Those may or may not have come up in the discussion, but we'll see. We'll see.
Well, those are going to be a must watch. All right. I actually have, I think, a coherent organization, oddly enough, this week. And so,
I don't believe it.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. We'll test it out. Test the theory. We're going to start, David, on the jihad portion of our proceedings, the strictly speaking jihad portion, with Africa. And
real
then the idea here is to compare and contrast Africa and the conditions there with Europe and the conditions there. Just in any given week. This is just an ordinary week in an ordinary year. And so we start with Somalia and the Top Coffee Cafe in Mogadishu. And there was a big crowd in the Top Coffee Cafe in Mogadishu there to watch the football game, the soccer game. And
Yeah, I'm glad you corrected yourself, Robert.
yes, the soccer game, not real football. The jihadis went in, they blew the place up. 9 people were killed and 20 injured as a car bomb exploded in front of the cafe. It was the work of Al-Shabaab, the jihad group there that is tied to Al-Qaeda. And so that's one place in Africa, the usual thing. In Nigeria, of course, we have news. Yes?
One second though. I just want to point out, this came up years ago, but there's a Christian couple that's from Somalia, and they do shows and so on, and they pointed out that like Somalia has everything it needs to be like an awesome place in Africa. It's got the resources and so on that it needs to be a great place, and yet it's one of the worst places on the planet. You ask why, and it's all jihad. It's jihad. That's just what jihad does. It just goes to places and destroys them, and gives people the alternative. Wants to leave everyone with the alternative: Sharia or chaos. Sharia or complete chaos and no stability and just nothing but death and destruction, because they know that's the only time people would choose Sharia. Okay, it's Sharia, some kind of order, some sort of authority, or endless chaos and death. Okay, we reluctantly accept. They know if you have the alternative of Sharia versus any other system in the world, people will choose the other system. And so the jihadis have to constantly just destroy everything, burn everything down to nothing until people decide to do what we want. And so they take places that could be great places and make them the worst places in the world. Great job, Muhammad.
Another place like that is Gaza, because Gaza, it has a beautiful climate, beautiful beaches, could be an international resort area like the French Riviera, and instead they devoted all their resources and the billions and billions of dollars they receive in humanitarian aid from the United States, from the European Union, from everybody, and they just devoted it all to jihad. And
tunnels.
And tunnels.
Tunnels. Billions of dollars worth of tunnels there. Great job, guys.
Yeah, could have built an efficient subway system, but anyway. In Nigeria, meanwhile, we had in Plateau State, jihadis went to 70 churches, 70, and closed them down this past week. And I think that that's important to keep in mind in terms of things we've discussed before, such as the Babri Mosque, Ram Mandir controversy in India, the Temple Mount, of course, where you have not one but 2 mosques built on the site of the Jewish temple, the ancient temple in Jerusalem, the Hagia Sophia, the grandest church in the Christian world for nearly 1,000 years, becoming a mosque, many other churches, the Church of St. John the Baptist in Damascus, and so on. And I wouldn't be at all surprised if on the sites of these 70 churches in Nigeria, there will soon be mosques. What do you think?
Yeah, when that happens, worst case scenario, we will point out the hypocrisy. because this is what we see over and over and over again. Muslims will cheer when they take a church and convert it into a mosque, and they think it's great, and then they whine like little babies when someone takes a place that ever had a mosque on it and turns it into anything else, and they whine like baby. There's no concept of consistency, and you wonder, people may wonder why. It's built into the religion. When Muhammad left Mecca and went to Medina, what are the revelations he's getting in the Quran? Whining about how intolerant the pagans are because they won't let them take the pilgrimage anymore. Oh, look at these intolerant pagans. They're so mean. They're so evil. They're so wicked. They're so intolerant and Islamophobic. They won't allow us to take the pilgrimage. Then Muhammad takes it over. No one's allowed to take the pilgrimage anymore except us. And it's like, they don't get it. There's no concept of consistency at all.
And certainly no reciprocity between the best of people on earth, as the Quran calls Muslims, and the most vile of created beings, as the Quran calls non-Muslims. So if you have such a disparate group of people, then you have no need to treat them in an even-handed way. All right, in Algeria, same thing, David. 43 out of 47 Protestant churches closed. Christians, both Catholic and Protestant, warned that if they proselytize, they will be liable to prosecution. So that's Algeria and Nigeria. Churches being closed, Christians being persecuted. And then we go to France. And what do you think we see in France, David?
Jihad.
You are correct, sir. This is, let me get it here. I know I have it. Thought I did. Why is it that I put these things in here and then they're gone?
Because you were bragging about how organized you are. Now,
See, that's it. It's pride.
you jinxed yourself.
That's it. Yep. All right. Anyway, there's a church in Paris. Notre Dame du Travail, something, you know. Anyway, this guy, last Sunday, he went into it, and then again on Monday, and he wrote with a black marker on pillars of the church. He wrote, "Submit to Allah, infidels. Prayer 5 times a day. Bastard Jesus, only one God, Allah. Big Babylon destroyed Satan the church. The church here we are burning, the first part. The last prophet Muhammad. The head cut off from those who exceed. I will make war on you, Christian world. We Muslims, we cannot accept this whore of religion. Go to hell, Satan burns."
I do have to point out, for everyone who's thinking, wow, this guy sounds like an idiot. Keep in mind, this guy is a University of Paris scholar compared to his prophet, so don't condemn him.
I do want to point out one thing, though. The guy said, "Bastard Jesus, one God, Allah." Somebody earlier said to me, well, that means he wasn't really a Muslim, because Muslims would never talk about their beloved prophet.
Wrong. Absolute nonsense. Absolute nonsense. I get messages from, I could start screenshotting them. I get messages from Muslims all the time saying Jesus is gay, or Jesus is gay, and it's just endless. And keep in mind, these are the same guys who will lie about anyone in the Bible in a heartbeat if it's somehow in their mind linked to defending Muhammad. So these are the same guys who will say that Abraham sent his servant to get a 3-year-old bride for Isaac. Complete nonsense according to the text, but they'll say that. So Abraham, he's a pedophile. Isaac's a pedophile. Everyone's pedophile. They'll just, so no, they don't respect the people they claim to respect. They respect one guy, Muhammad. Everyone else is under the bus.
That's it. Also in France, we have, I know I have her picture. I know I got it. Here she is. Séverine. This is a French name, David. That's the defense attorney there. Séverine Leroux. Leureux. Séverine.
In French, that's pronounced fin, I hear.
Exactly. So Séverine Leroux, whatever. She's the defense attorney for this chap named Mukhtar B. They didn't give his last name. He's from Morocco, although he was born in Algeria. And he was arrested by the cops for shoplifting. And when he was arrested, he said, "Allahu Akbar, I'm going to blow you all up, you infidels."
Mm-hmm.
And so he's being charged with justifying or glorifying terrorism, which is a crime in France. Actually, they call it apology for terrorism, as in apologetics.
Yeah, you said crime in France. Not for long, though, Robert.
No, not for long, but it is for the moment. And
so I think it's basically there's this rule in law that you can't charge someone with something that was made a law after they already did it. So if I'm doing something today and tomorrow it becomes against the law, you can't charge me for it after, for something I did before it became a law.
That's
but
right.
in France, what they'll want to do is say, hey, this isn't going to be a law 5 years from now. So why would we charge anyone for this now?
That's a good point. But anyway, they've done it. And so Séverine Leroux, whatever, she says that this is a choice of words. That is, Allahu Akbar, I'm going to blow you up, you infidels. This is a choice of words that plays into the hands of the extremists and is regrettable. It's regrettable, she says. But then she goes on to say, I don't see what's terrorist about the fact that he said Allahu Akbar. And then the French paper, La Dépêche, very helpfully says Allahu Akbar means God is great. Does Allahu Akbar mean God is great, David?
That means Allah is greater than your God, greater than your system, greater than anything that you like or worship. And we're quite familiar with this being a standard slogan to shout when slaughtering unbelievers in the name of Allah.
Indeed. And so it is indeed something that's designed to fulfill the Quranic imperative, strike terror in the enemies of Allah. Muhammad Atta, the 9/11 hijacker, actually wrote himself a letter that survived it was in his luggage that got flagged. He was allowed on the plane and his luggage got stopped. So in the luggage he had this letter pepping himself up that said, remember to shout Allahu Akbar because it terrifies the infidels. Yep.
Yeah.
So
because you're good enough, you're smart enough, and people like you. Just don't forget to shout Allahu Akbar. Don't forget, you idiot, you can do it.
Because Séverine says that ain't terrorism, but seems to me that's exactly the whole point, to strike terror. That's not me making it up, that's Muhammad Atta and many others. All right, over in Paris, meanwhile, also in France, you have high security for the Paris Olympics. You know who's providing the security for the Paris Olympics, David?
Israel.
Close. It's Qatar.
Oh, nice. You know what's funny? When you said it, I knew it wasn't Israel, but I was thinking those are the guys who are best equipped to defend against constant terrorist attacks and so on. And so if you really wanted security, that would make most sense. But come on, this is France. They're going to do what makes least sense. And then
so there is a Qatari police vehicle at the Eiffel Tower, and there are Qatari police all over Paris. Apparently they're this Muslim Brotherhood supporting nation. They're going to stop the jihadis. But certainly it's a remarkable precedent has been set, because it was just a few years ago the French had many troops in Africa fighting against jihadis in Niger and Mali, elsewhere, and they just gave up not long ago, withdrew them all, and now you have jihad supporting nations going to France to protect the French. It's an interesting sign of how things are going. But
I'd probably go with ISIS to protect people there. You know what they actually should do, like seriously here, because they're not going to do anything that involves common sense, but something that could work. Find out the terrorist group that is most likely to attack the Olympics and get a different Islamic terrorist group that hates that terrorist group. Because you know how the terrorist group's always
Yeah.
slaughtering and killing each other? Get the terrorist group that is opposed to that terrorist group and say, hey, we want you because those guys are going to be attacking. We know you hate those guys. If you want to kill some of those guys, now's your chance. That'd be the only way they pull this off.
That's a great idea. You know, that really, if they're worried about ISIS at the Olympics, they should have gotten Iran to provide security. And then you got Shiites fighting Sunnis. It would be perfect.
Or
Uh,
better yet, they could have like a small little army from each terrorist group, and then when they find out who's attacking, they're like, "Oh, it's ISIS. Okay, bring in the Shias," and then they come in there. Or if it's this group, okay, now get these terrorists who hate them, and so on. Be like, that's your only chance.
yep. But they do have ISIS. They just arrested 2 ISIS suicide bombers who were plotting to blow up the Paris Olympics. And they were arrested, but I believe it was just yesterday. Let me make sure here. Today is Wednesday the 17th. This was actually 2 days ago, the 15th. CNN reported that a French soldier who was part of the anti-terrorism force was stabbed in Paris. So I don't know how effective these French are going to be, even with their Qatari friends.
Well, hang on, Robert. To be fair, this guy did get stabbed by a Muslim shouting Allahu Akbar, someone who had previously been convicted of murder and was somehow out. But I saw right after it was released that police, fortunately, have ruled out terrorism as a motivation. So nothing to worry about.
Yeah, he's getting psychiatric care, so everything's all
Mhm.
right.
Yeah, because anyone who reads the Muslim sources and concludes that they have to wage jihad must be insane, since it's so clearly and obviously a religion of peace.
Indeed. Quite so. There's just no doubt about it whatsoever. All right, so the contrast is clear. We have a series of stories from France of Muslims being violent, jihad being waged, people being attacked. We have a series of stories from Nigeria, one from Algeria, one from Somalia, in which exactly the same thing is happening.
It's like it's everywhere. Isn't that weird?
You would think, though, with all the talk about Islamophobia, that we would talk about jihad in Africa, fair enough. But then you go to Europe, you would think you would have all sorts of stories of Muslims being persecuted. Now, of course, that should not be happening, but it is not happening. And what's odd is that it seems to be the Christians and the non-Muslims being attacked everywhere.
Yeah. It's really, really, really weird. And I just have to say it again for the 487,000th time. Guys, this is the difference to point out. This is the difference to point out when someone goes, "Oh, look, these guys are slaughtering people in the name of Allah," and then some idiot goes, "Oh, but all religions have their extremists. Look at Westboro Baptist Church or something else." Guys, once again, when you have some weird church that comes out of nowhere, you don't see people around the world getting the exact same idea. Why? Because it's not actually coming from the Bible. If it were, then you'd see everyone getting the same idea around the world. And you don't see, when some weird church with weird beliefs pops up, you don't see people Christians from around the world all flooding to that area to join the movement and so on. That's what you find in Islam. Wherever Islam goes, there's always this portion that are calling for jihad and calling for the violent subjugation of the world. They somehow all get the exact same idea. And when you have an organization like ISIS rise up and say, "Hey, we're the new caliphate," suddenly you get Muslims flooding into the area from around the world. They somehow had the exact same idea about what Islam teaches as ISIS. Where'd they get the idea from? That's the question.
Where indeed? It's a great mystery.
Yep. That will never solve it. No,
Here
sweet.
is
Learn to read.
another mystery as to why this happened. And of course, the cops are searching for the motive. But this is in Queens, New York. And outside a Roman Catholic church in Queens. It is Holy Family Roman Catholic Church in Fresh Meadows. And they had a statue, 3 statues outside the church. You can see Mary. Over here is Joseph on the right. And then the child Jesus in the middle. And what happened was that just a few days ago, a man named Jamshid Chowdhury, who is a taxi driver, pulled up in front of the church at 5:30 a.m. And the New York Post says he calmly crossed the street before removing a shoe and charging toward white marble statues of Mary, Joseph, and Jesus. The taxi driver swatted the heads of Mary and Joseph. This was all caught on surveillance video, you see. Swatted the heads of Mary and Joseph with his shoe, then turned his attention to Jesus and hacked at the statue's head until it went spinning to the ground. Then he spit on the statue and calmly walked off, shoe still in hand. Jamshid Chowdhury. Jamshid, by the way, David, I see somebody in the comment section saying Chowdhury is not a Muslim surname. That's actually not true.
Like Anjem Chowdhury, the biggest Islamist of our time.
Yes, exactly. So that's obviously false, but it's also worth noting that Jamshid is a Persian name that is common among Muslims in Central and South Asia. So anyway, what I wanted to ask you is, what on earth is going on here with this guy being so calm about this? The New York Post says that he went into this twisted on-camera tantrum, but then their own description contradicts themselves. They contradict themselves because they say he was calm before and calm after. So why is he calmly doing this weird thing of beheading a statue?
Well, if you have a problem with images of prophets or so on, or if you think Christians are over there worshiping this thing, why not go smash it?
Exactly. This is something that it contradicts Islam in many ways. And here again, of course, we get people saying, now why would you behead the Jesus statue when they revere Jesus as a prophet? Well, in the first place, they hate statues. No representation of the human form is allowed. Also, the statue is obviously in a Christian context. It is a manifestation of belief in the divinity of Christ. The Christ as the Son of God, Christ as incarnate, all these things that are rejected in Islam.
Yeah, and it's just it's amazing because it's always the same thing. How much Muslim outrage do you have? How much Muslim outrage do you see when someone does something in a church, desecrates a church, burns a church, smashes a statue, whatever, desecrates Christian or Jewish graves? How much Muslim outrage do you see? None. And yet, these are the same guys who demand we do nothing but show the utmost respect and reverence for their prophet and their book. And when we don't, they complain, oh, but when do Muslims ever do anything to your religious symbols? How about all day, every day around the world? You just don't pay attention to it because you don't care.
There you go. All right, plenty more jihad here. Let's see. We did this. We did that. Oh, speaking of statues, we had, of course, the Anne Frank statue in Amsterdam that was painted on the base of the statue. You see there, painted Gaza underneath. Now, what does Anne Frank have to do with Gaza? This is obviously
Nothing.
Just the targeting of Jews in general.
Yeah, and that's what really comes out. And you know as well as I, when they're speaking in Arabic, it's all Jews, 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 Jews. Mm-hmm. That's what you find in the Muslim sources. Jews, Jews, Jews. It's not the hour will not come until the Muslims fight the Zionists, and the Zionists are hiding behind rocks and trees. It's just Jews. The Jews are hiding. The Jews are the targets. But when they're speaking in front of a Western audience or to Western journalists, it's no, we have no problem with Jews. It's just with the Zionists.
Exactly.
And yet you see what they actually think. They keep showing their true colors.
The Western journalists always fall for it too.
Yeah, because
always.
they're stupid. Because they're stupid.
Yep. All right, 1972 Munich Olympics, David. I don't know if you were watching. I was 10 years old. I was watching. And
Which
there was
which year?
the
Which year?
1972.
Okay.
So I
I
think you
wasn't.
might have
I
missed it.
wasn't. I wasn't born for 4 years. So.
Oh, well. Anyway, the Munich Olympics in 1972, there were Palestinian jihadis who went and murdered members of the Israeli Olympic team. And I mention it now, all these years later. This is a very famous photograph of one of the killers, and he's there at the Olympic village where the Olympic athletes were staying, and he they killed a lot of Israelis, as I said. In any case, there was going to be in Paris at the Olympics this year a memorial ceremony honoring the Olympic athletes who were murdered at that time. But it was moved because of fears that it would be targeted by Islamic jihadis. So the memorial for the Olympic athletes killed by Islamic jihadis is going to be held in secret for fear of Islamic jihadis.
That's good. That's good. That's wise.
It's
If you're a
just,
coward.
yeah, it indicates the
If you're a
advance.
coward who's Oh,
Yeah,
just saying, if you're a coward who's constantly trying to appease terrorists, then yeah, it's a good move.
indeed. And that's what we got. That's what the
Hmm.
world is awash with these days. Speaking of which, speaking of appeasement and denial, let me get this guy, Zaniar Matapur. There he is. This is Zaniar Matapur. And Zaniar Matapur is from Iran, and he lives in Norway. And in 2022, he went to a gay festival in Oslo, and he killed 2 people and wounded 9 at a gay bar, the London Pub in Oslo. And
When you started that story, Robert, I thought this was going in a very different direction, but go ahead.
well, actually, it is going in a different direction from what you might expect, because this is not really about the murders, which took place in 2022, but he was found guilty of terrorism this past week. And I thought it was amazing that the AP story, the Associated Press, headlined its story, Iranian born Norwegian man found guilty in 2022 Oslo LGBT plus festival attack. So this is the Iranian born Norwegian
Looks
in
Norwegian to
question.
me.
Yes, he's clearly quite Norwegian. I expect him to start singing songs from The Sound of Music. No, that's Austrian, isn't it? But it's all blondes. Anyway, this is just more of this denial and obfuscation that they call this guy Norwegian, which, that's like calling, if I happen to be standing in the garage calling me an automobile. He's in Norway, but he's not Norwegian. And not only that, but Zaniar Matapur would not even say that he's Norwegian. Because I would lay odds, I'd bet you money right now, David, that he considers himself to be a citizen of the Ummah, the global Islamic community, and thus not a Norwegian at all. But what's the thing they want to avoid saying that he is?
Muslim.
Precisely. And so any other descriptor will do.
Yeah, when you said this guy was going to a gay bar, I thought we were going to end up with stories like the ones I've been reading in the Muslim sources about. You've seen them, Robert.
Oh, yeah.
There's a bunch of. It's interesting because it's in Sunni and Shia sources about
Yep.
Muhammad and Dihya al-Kalbi. But Dihya al-Kalbi was so handsome that when he arrived in town, all the women of the town would run out to gaze upon Dihya al-Kalbi. How hot this guy was,
He probably looked like
and
Zaniar Matapur.
yep, looked exactly like him.
Mm-hmm.
And so you've got all these interesting sources where Muhammad is with Dihya in a private meeting, and he's behind a curtain. And when Dihya would come over, he would go behind the curtain and so on. And then when people would see him leaving from behind the curtain with Dia, or people would see him in the house with Dia, he would say, hey, no, that's the angel Gabriel. Just he looks exactly like Dia. And they're like, are you kidding me? I mean, can you imagine anyone else doing this? Like, honey, who is that? Who is that woman sneaking outside the window? Oh, it's an angel, dear. Don't worry about that. Don't worry. It's like, are you kidding me?
And
Like
besides that,
the
besides
dumbest
that,
explanation.
she breastfed me, so it's okay.
Yeah. We're all good.
Yeah. All right. Oh man. All right. Let's get hold of ourselves here, ladies and gentlemen. We've got University of Washington in the United States, and we have, what's her name? Isha Hussein. I know I got Isha Hussein here somewhere. Here she is. There's Isha Hussein, and she went to the University of Washington, and then she reported that she had a terrible time of it. She said, this is what she said, my roommate noticed I was a black Muslim and started making comments such as, my family and I don't like black people. I'm sure somebody said that. That's why my religion is better than yours. Yeah, she said that too. And Muslims are suicide bombers. Not only that, she said that her roommate, who was Jewish, would pull a knife on her while praying. I think that happened too. In any
Sounds
case,
very believable.
She complained to the university and complained that they were not taking her concerns seriously. She wrote on her Instagram, as a black Muslim woman, the University of Washington Housing and Food Services failed to protect me on the multiple occasions described. There was a huge outcry at the University of Washington. Justice for Isha Hussein rally held by the Somali Student Association. They got a
Nice.
Somali Student Association at the University of Washington. However, they got a third roommate, David. It's not just Isha and the Jewish girl. And the third roommate said she did not witness any threats of open hostility towards the victim from the suspect. The police were not able to verify a single instance of all this harassment.
Weird. I mean, with all sorts of like recording devices, and anyone can just pull out a phone and record something or leave it recording audio. I mean, it seems like you would have had some common sense if this ongoing persecution. You'd think that the other roommate would have witnessed some of it, or Isha would have had the common sense to record a little bit of it. Just leave a little phone recording, something like that. It's weird.
Yeah, you'd think, phones are everywhere, videos all over the place. Multiple videos of the Trump shooter from Saturday night all over the place, more coming out all the time, of him walking around the grounds, casing the joint, etc., getting ready. And yet there's nothing on this. Reminds me
And
of,
by the way,
yeah.
oh, go ahead.
Well, remember that girl from a few years back, Yasmin Sawade, who said that she was on the New York subway, and some guys with MAGA hats came and pulled off her hijab, and nobody came to help her, and they were abusing her in the middle of this crowded subway train. No video there either, oddly enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is another one where when you started the story, I thought it was going in a different direction, because I've heard so many times over the years about the racism in the MSA, the Muslim Student Association, how they treat black Muslims very differently from the way they treat Arab Muslims and so on. So I thought when you're talking about a roommate, I thought it was going to be, no, she had an Arab Muslim roommate who was making fun of her for being black, but nope, sounds like it totally made up.
Totally made up. All right. Meanwhile, while all these things are going on, we can be assured, David, that our intelligence and law enforcement apparatus is on the job. And so this is Fort Liberty, which used to be called Fort Bragg, after the Confederate General Braxton Bragg, in an effort to reconcile the factions of the Civil War and heal the wounds of the nation. But now, of course, we're beyond all that, so it's no longer Fort Bragg. But in any case, they did had a slide presentation recently about terrorist groups. Now, what do you notice about these terrorist groups?
Can't see them. I have a little thing. My screen is small here.
I gotcha. Well, I'll read it out then. The terrorist groups. It says it's a part of a PowerPoint presentation, and the heading is terrorist groups. But there's not ISIS or Al Qaeda or Al Shabaab or Boko Haram, nothing like that. What we got instead, it says anti-abortion, right to life, and Operation Rescue, pro-life, oppose Roe versus Wade, types of advocacy, demonstrations and protests, etc., etc. It's got the National Right to Life logo, Operation Rescue logo, etc. Those are the terrorist groups that
They're
the U.S. military. Yep.
They're the ones we need to be most worried about. Not the ones that are going to slaughter us in the name of Allah. Those are our friends.
Indeed. Indeed. Meanwhile, we have the southern border, or what used to be known as the southern border of the United States.
There's no border, Robert. Come on.
Indeed, it's a passé idea to have a border.
It's one world, Robert. We're one big world. Come on.
But a record number of people from Tajikistan have crossed the southern border in the last year, and hundreds were let in. Many of them were already on the terror watch list, and they were released into the United States. But the heat, the negative publicity got so bad about this that the Biden administration has now halted the release of Tajik migrants into the United States.
It's pretty Islamophobic.
Yeah, I think that's terrible. It's just the Islamophobia is off the charts.
Just imagine these terrorists coming to the U.S. because they want to start a new life, get a fresh start, work hard, and so on, and then Biden administration ruins it, derails the whole jihad train.
The Islamophobia is just... I'm speechless. David, meanwhile, we have other outrages. In the UK, you might have seen this video. These were pro-Hamas demonstrators in UK, and they are complaining that male police officers touched a Muslim, disabled, trans person of color with...
That's the last person on the planet you want to touch, because that's every box. That's every box checked. That's every possible box of someone that you don't want to, that you get in trouble for touching.
Yeah.
Right there.
A Muslim, disabled, trans person of color was touched without, I don't know what to say, his, her, its consent. So, the people making the video were outraged.
That person's pronouns are Allahu and Akbar.
Yep. Meanwhile, we have the new Lord Chancellor and Secretary of State for Justice in Britain, and this is the new Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, and the new Lord Chancellor and Secretary of State for Justice, Shabana Mahmood, who, of course, is a former BDS activist, a Free Palestine activist. What could possibly go wrong, David? What do you think? That's
nothing.
Nothing. That's multicultural. Meanwhile, in Germany, we had a terrible story out of the Saarland, where a Syrian, a Muslim migrant from Syria, was walking along, minding his own business, and he said that a native German set his German shepherd upon him to attack him. And so this became a big hate crime story. Lots of stories about Islamophobia, racism, xenophobia, hatred. You can fill in all the blanks. We've seen it all before. It's an epidemic. It's a pandemic. But what do you think, David? This did not happen. Police investigated. They have found nothing. And they believe now that the Syrian Muslim migrant faked the hate crime.
Islam is the Jussie Smollett of religions, apparently.
Well, you got victimhood status, and the problem is you never have any victimhood, and so you keep having to try to shore it up. So they make up these stories for hate crimes when there are no hate crimes. And speaking of made up stories, let's segue back to Britain for This fellow, Adam Loxley. There's Adam. Adam Loxley, also known as Omar Abdullah Bal. And his brother, Hassan Bal, asked him to pick up 1,000 pounds, that is not weightlifting, but money, 1,000 pounds in cash, earmarked for ISIS. And so Omar Abdullah Bal, Adam Loxley, went to pick it up. There he is. And he found that it was actually a map of London that a reporter had planted with his brother. And the whole thing was a sting. And so he said he didn't know. He said he did not realize that his brother was raising money for ISIS. I believed that the money was going to a charitable cause. Could it be, David, that he's telling the truth, that he actually, or could it be, let me ask this, that it was actually going to ISIS, but he also thinks it was for a charitable cause?
Yeah, I mean, if you have the right mindset, ISIS is a charitable cause.
That's right, and certainly old Adam Loxley, aka Omar Abdullah Bal, who accidentally collected money for ISIS, he is somebody of the right mindset. And he is also in the news this week because he's a plumber, and he refuses to take work from Zionists.
Yeah, like back when you had like CARE and their unindicted co-conspirator status and so on for this Holy Land charitable giving scheme, but it was funding terrorism. I mean, they all thought that was a charitable cause, and it's going straight to terrorists.
That's right. Absolutely. Islamic, as a matter of fact, the Islamic law regarding almsgiving, zakat, is that it's permissible to give it to jihad. As a matter of fact, you are obligated, if possible, to give some of it to jihad, but anything that's zakat eligible is good enough. But giving
that's
it to
straight
jihad
out of the Quran. That's straight out of the Quran too.
Precisely. So it's a meritorious act. Hey, David, we got a new religion just dropped. The Ahmadi religion of peace and light. Have you heard of these guys? It's not the Ahmad.
It's not the regular Ahmadis?
No, these are out of Egypt.
Oh, okay. Cool.
And I'll read you what Bitter Winter, which is a site that tracks religious persecution. Bitter Winter says, the Ahmadi religion of peace and light is a Shia derivative new religious movement, not to be confused with the Sunni derivative Ahmadiyya community that is in Pakistan.
Yeah, change your name, guys. You're only going to confuse people.
Yes, but the Bitter Winter calls it Aropal, which is the acronym Ahmadi Religion of Peace and Light. But it just makes me think of ROFL, rolling on the floor laughing. But anyway, Aropal originated with the teachings in Iraq of Ahmad al-Hassan, whom devotees regard as the Yamani, a John the Baptist-like character who paved the way for the appearance of the Imam al-Mahdi, the eschatological figure who will restore a divine just state in the end times. The Aropal identifies the Qaim, the riser of the family of Muhammad, the end times character who leads the actual rise for Imam Mahdi for the establishment of the divine just state. And with Abdullah Hashem Abba as-Sadiq, a college-educated American citizen with an Egyptian father and an American mother. He's the second in a list of 12 Mahdis, Ahmad al-Hassan being the first. And the Aropal believes he's mentioned in Muhammad's will, which is a Shiite document.
Yeah, I believe I'm also mentioned in Muhammad's will, but sadly, it was corrupted by these guys. These guys corrupted it, tried to write me out of it. But no, Muhammad said, hey, eventually a guy, David Wood, will come, and Robert Spencer as well, and you need to listen to whatever they say. And I say, shut it down, guys. Shut it all down.
I thought a tame sheep had eaten the part where I was mentioned in Muhammad's will.
Yeah, that happened.
Anyway,
Uthman burned all the parts that I was in.
Yes, well. That guy. He was the worst Quran desecrator ever.
That guy. Ooh, if I could build a time machine powered by 1.21 gigawatts of Islamophobia and go back and straighten that out.
Anyway, I brought up the Ahmadi religion of peace and light because, as you might expect, they are being persecuted by the Sunnis in Egypt. Because
the religion of death and destruction.
yes, yes, the Islamic religion of death and destruction, and it is persecuting the Ahmadi religion of peace and light. Any religion of peace and light is going to get persecuted by these guys. But God willing, we're going to be here next week to track more jihad, to let you know about these things that the establishment media dares not tell you, so that you can be informed and aware. Ladies and gentlemen, till then, pray, hope, and don't worry.